The great hall of the Galactic Federation stretched for miles in every direction, its crystal walls reaching toward a dome that showed the swirling colors of space beyond. Ambassador Zextira of the Vorthan Empire stood at the central platform, her 6 arms gesturing wildly as she spoke to the assembled representatives of 47 different worlds. The translator devices built into each seat hummed softly as they converted her words into hundreds of different languages, but the message remained the same no matter how it was heard. 3 more colonies have gone silent in the past month, she declared, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. The mining station at Kepler 442 stopped responding to all communications 2 weeks ago. The research outpost orbiting the gas giant in the Vega system sent their last transmission 5 days ago, and it was nothing but static and screaming. Elder Counselor Kefton of the Crystalline Collective leaned forward in his floating chair, his translucent body catching the light from the dome above. His species had been part of the Federation for over 800 years, and in all that time, they had never encountered a threat they couldn't handle through diplomacy or superior technology. Ambassador Zextira, he said in his melodic voice, you speak of these incidents as if they represent some new danger, but have you considered the more likely explanations? Pirates have always been active in the Outer Rim territories. Equipment failures happen. Solar storms can disrupt communications. A ripple of agreement moved through the assembled delegates. The hegemony representative, a massive creature covered in chitinous armor, clicked his mandibles in what his species considered laughter. The Vorthans have always been prone to panic, he rumbled. Perhaps if you spent more resources on proper defensive measures instead of those ridiculous art installations, your colonies would be better protected. Zextira's eye stalk swiveled to focus on the hegemony delegate, and her skin flushed the deep purple that indicated anger in her species. These are not simple pirate raids, she insisted. The energy signatures we detected before losing contact don't match any known weapon systems. The patterns of destruction suggest technology far beyond anything in our databases. Whatever is doing this, it's not using conventional weapons. Energy signatures? Scoffed Commander Vishara, from the Nexus worlds. Probably solar flares, or magnetic field fluctuations. You're seeing conspiracies, where there are only natural phenomena. The debate continued for hours, as it always did when the Federation faced something it didn't understand. The elder species, those who had been part of the galactic community for millennia, dismissed the concerns of the younger races with the patience of parents dealing with frightened children. They had seen threats come and go over the centuries. Space pirates, rogue AI systems, stellar phenomena that temporarily disrupted communications. None of it had ever posed a real danger to the established order. Elder Counselor Kefton raised one of his crystalline appendages, and the hall fell silent. Perhaps, he said with the tone of someone about to share ancient wisdom, we should consult the old stories about such mysterious disappearances. There are legends, after all, of a species that once terrorized this part of the galaxy. Several delegates leaned forward with interest. The Crystalline Collective were known as the keepers of galactic history, and their memory cores contained stories that went back millions of years. The humans, Kefton continued, his voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller. According to the ancient records, they came from a small blue world in the outer spiral arm, a planet they called Earth. The legends describe them as violent beyond measure, creatures who turned warfare into an art form. They were said to be the only species in known history that actually enjoyed conflict, that grew stronger through adversity rather than weaker. A young delegate from the Tory system interrupted. But Elder Counselor, those are just myths. The archaeological evidence suggests that any such species destroyed itself in nuclear fire over 10,000 years ago. The radiation signatures from their homeworld confirm total planetary sterilization. Kefton's form shimmered with what might have been amusement. Indeed, young one, the humans, if they ever truly existed, eliminated themselves through their own violent nature. The old stories tell of creatures so aggressive that they fought wars over resources they had in abundance, who turned their own world into a radioactive wasteland rather than learn to live in peace. They serve as a cautionary tale about what happens when intelligence develops without wisdom. The assembled delegates chuckled at this, a sound that translated differently across species, but carried the same meaning of dismissive amusement. The idea that some mythical warrior race was responsible for a few missing colonies was absurd on its face. In the back of the Great Hall, Dr. Velinara sat quietly in the section reserved for scientific observers. As a xenarchaeologist from the Altarian Republic, she was not permitted to address the council directly, but she was allowed to observe and take notes for her research. What she had heard today troubled her greatly, not because she believed in myths and legends, but because of what she had discovered in her laboratory just 3 days ago. The artifact sat in a secure container back at the research station orbiting Altair Prime. It was roughly cylindrical, about the size of her torso, and composed of materials that shouldn't exist, according to current understanding of physics. The metal, if it could be called metal, seemed to shift and flow even when solid, and it generated energy patterns that her instruments couldn't properly analyze. Most disturbing of all, the energy signature it produced was identical to the readings that Ambassadors Xthera had described from the missing colonies. She had tried to contact the council about her findings, but her requests for an audience had been buried in bureaucratic procedures that could take months to resolve. The Federation was not known for moving quickly when it came to new information, especially information that might challenge their comfortable assumptions about the galaxy. As the session continued, Dr. Velinara made careful notes about everything she heard: the dismissive attitude of the elder species, the refusal to take the disappearances seriously, the casual mention of humans as nothing more than extinct mythological creatures. All of it would be important if her suspicions proved correct. The artifact in her laboratory was not ancient. Every test she had run suggested that it was recently manufactured, possibly within the last few decades. The technology it represented was beyond anything the Federation had developed, but it followed design principles that seemed hauntingly familiar when she compared them to the theoretical reconstructions of human engineering found in archaeological sites. If she was right, if the evidence she had found meant what she thought it meant, then the galaxy was about to discover that some myths were more real than anyone wanted to believe. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Un's Defiance, watching the starfield shift and change as his ship moved through hyperspace toward the Kepler sector. The bridge was compact compared to the massive vessels he had served on during the Solar Wars, but every inch of space was used efficiently. Banks of monitors displayed tactical information, navigation data, and sensor readings in the clean, functional style that had become standard for all Terran Union vessels. "Drop us out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park from the tactical station. Her fingers moved across the control panels with practiced ease, checking weapons systems and defensive screens, even though they expected this to be a routine scouting mission. Old habits from humanity's violent past died hard, and the Terran Union Navy had learned never to assume any situation was truly safe. "Understood, Lisa," Morrison replied, settling into his command chair. "Nathan, what are your sensors showing?" Dr. Nathan Cole looked up from his science station, his young face creased with concentration. As the ship's xenobiologist, he was responsible for analyzing any signs of alien life they might encounter during their deep space missions. The possibility of finding other intelligent species was both exciting and terrifying to the human crew. "Nothing unusual, Captain. Standard background radiation, some asteroid debris, no obvious signs of technological activity." The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of hyperspace, and the main viewer showed the Kepler sector in all its glory. 3 gas giants dominated the system, their colorful atmospheres swirling in patterns that had fascinated human astronomers for decades. Several smaller rocky planets orbited closer to the system's star, and preliminary surveys from Earth suggested that at least 2 of them might be suitable for human colonization. "Take us toward the 4th planet," Morrison ordered. "Nice and slow. Keep all sensors active, and watch for anything unusual." The Defiance moved deeper into the system, its engines barely whispering as it glided between the orbits of the outer planets. The crew had performed this routine dozens of times in other systems, always hoping to find something interesting, but usually discovering nothing more than rocks and gas. The universe seemed remarkably empty of intelligent life, despite all the theories that suggested otherwise. "Captain," Lisa called suddenly, her voice sharp with alertness, "I'm picking up an energy signature at bearing 27 Mark 4. It's big, and it's moving fast." Morrison was out of his chair immediately, moving to stand behind the tactical station. "How big?" "Roughly 800 meters long, sir." "Definitely artificial. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases." "Red alert," Morrison ordered, and the bridge lighting shifted to the familiar crimson glow that meant potential danger. "All hands to battle stations." "Nathan, are you getting any readings that might indicate what we're dealing with?" Before Dr. Cole could respond, the main viewer flickered and suddenly showed an alien vessel that was unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. It was sleek and graceful, with curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in motion. Its hull glowed with patterns of blue and green light that pulsed in rhythm with its movement through space. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. "They're using a carrier wave I've never seen before, but the computer is attempting to decode it." The transmission came through as a series of harmonious tones that sounded almost musical, but the translation software quickly converted it into words that appeared on the main screen. "Unknown vessel, you are trespassing in Federation space. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Compliance is not optional." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. In his experience, anyone who started a conversation by demanding surrender usually had hostile intentions. "Open a channel," he ordered. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Union ship Defiance. We are on a peaceful exploration mission and were not aware that this system was claimed by any government. We request diplomatic contact with your leadership." The alien response came immediately, and the tone was decidedly unfriendly. "You will comply with inspection procedures or face the consequences. This is your final warning, Captain," Lisa reported, her voice tense. "The alien vessel is charging what appears to be a weapons system. Energy buildup is consistent with a directed energy weapon of unknown configuration." Morrison had spent 20 years in the Terran Union Navy, and he had learned to trust his instincts when it came to hostile situations. The aliens had made demands, ignored his diplomatic overtures, and were now powering up weapons. In his book, that constituted an act of aggression. "Battle stations," he ordered. "Lisa, bring our weapons online, but don't target their ship yet. Let's see if we can still talk our way out of this." On the alien vessel, Commander Tissera of the Hegemony Navy stared at her tactical displays with growing concern. The unknown ship showed none of the standard identifying signals that all Federation vessels were required to broadcast. Its design was completely unfamiliar, with hard angles and aggressive lines that suggested a purely military purpose. Most disturbing of all, it was not responding to standard inspection protocols. "Commander," her weapons officer reported, "the alien vessel has activated what appear to be defensive systems. I'm reading multiple energy signatures that could be weapons of unknown type." Tissera species had been part of the Federation for over 3 centuries, and in all that time, they had never encountered a truly hostile alien race. Pirates and smugglers occasionally resisted inspection, but they always used known technology and familiar tactics. This vessel was completely outside their experience. "Charge main batteries," she ordered. "If they want to play games, we'll show them how the hegemony deals with uncooperative vessels." The alien ship's weapons came online with a brilliant flash of blue-white energy, and Morrison knew they were past the point of diplomatic solutions. Lisa, target their weapon systems. Fire when ready. What happened next would be debated by military historians for decades to come. The human ship's weapons were based on principles that the Federation had never encountered. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, the Defiance fired solid projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic energy weapons punched through the alien vessel's defensive screens as if they didn't exist, disabling their main guns and propulsion systems in a matter of seconds. Commander. Tissera found herself floating in the wreckage of her bridge, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across damaged control panels. Half her crew was unconscious, and the other half was frantically trying to restore basic life support. The alien attack had been swift, precise, and devastatingly effective. "Surrender your vessel and prepare to be boarded," came a new voice over the communications system. "We have disabled your weapons and engines, but your life support is intact. Do not attempt to resist, and no one else will be harmed." Tissera activated her emergency transmitter with one of her remaining functional limbs. If she was going to be captured by these mysterious aliens, at least the Federation would know what had happened to her ship. "This is Commander Tissera of the Federation vessel Brightwing," she transmitted on all emergency frequencies. "We have encountered an unknown alien species in the Kepler sector. They call themselves humans, and their technology is far beyond anything in our databases. They have disabled our ship and are preparing to board us. Alert the Council immediately." Within hours, her emergency transmission would reach Federation listening posts throughout the sector, carrying news that would shake the galaxy to its foundation. The mythical humans were not only real, but they were here, they were armed, and they had just demonstrated that Federation military superiority was nothing more than a comfortable illusion. Fleet Admiral Carlos Mendez stood in the command center of Orbital Station Gamma, watching the massive construction yards that stretched 4 kilometers in every direction around Earth's moon. Dozens of ships in various stages of completion hung, suspended in the zero-gravity construction bays, their hulls gleaming under the artificial lights. The largest vessels were the new Explorer-class ships, designed for humanity's first major push into deep space exploration. The construction project represented 20 years of planning and cooperation between Earth's previously fractured nations. After the solar wars had finally ended, the survivors had realized that humanity's future lay among the stars. The Terran Union had been formed specifically to coordinate the massive undertaking of building an interstellar fleet, and Mendez had been chosen to lead it. "Admiral," called Commander Paul Williams, his aide-de-camp. "Priority message from Deep Space Command. It's marked urgent." Mendez took the datapad and scanned the contents quickly. His weathered face grew grim as he read the report from Captain Morrison's mission to the Kepler sector. First contact with an alien species, and it had gone wrong in the worst possible way. The humans were now branded as aggressors by a galactic civilization they hadn't even known existed. "Get me a secure channel to Earth immediately," Mendez ordered. "I need to speak with President Rodriguez." Within minutes, the holographic image of President Helen Rodriguez appeared in the command center's communications bay. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, and the lines around her eyes spoke of the enormous burden she had carried since taking office 5 years ago. Behind her, Mendez could see the familiar walls of the Situation Room deep beneath the Continental Government complex. "Admiral," she said without preamble, "I assume you've seen Captain Morrison's report. How bad is this situation?" "Worse than we anticipated, Madam President," Mendez replied. "We always knew there was a possibility of encountering other intelligent species, but we expected to be able to control the circumstances of first contact. Instead, we've stumbled into what appears to be an established galactic civilization, and they think we're hostile invaders." The president's expression grew even more serious. What are our options? Before Mendez could respond, another figure appeared in the hologram. General Ryan Cooper, head of Earth Defense Command, looked like he had been pulled away from something urgent. His uniform was rumpled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "The Federation is mobilizing against us," Cooper reported. "Our long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements throughout the outer sectors. Whatever this Galactic Federation is, they have a lot of ships, and they're all heading toward human space." Dr. Amy Chen joined the conversation from her office at the Xenological Institute as Earth's leading expert on potential alien contact scenarios. She had spent years developing protocols for exactly this kind of situation. Unfortunately, none of her carefully planned diplomatic approaches seemed relevant when the aliens were already treating humanity as a threat. "I've been analyzing the data Captain Morrison collected during his encounter with the alien vessel," she reported. "Their technology appears to be based on fundamentally different principles than ours. They use energy-based weapons and defensive systems, while our approach has always favored kinetic weapons and armor plating. It's possible that our tactical advantages are greater than we realize." Admiral Susan Hayes, of the Deep Space Fleet, appeared on the channel from her flagship, the UNS Liberty. "Admiral Mendez is right about the scope of this situation," she said. "My scouts are reporting Federation ships throughout the territories we've been quietly surveying for the past decade. They know about our outposts, our mining operations, everything. We've been operating in their backyard without realizing it." President Rodriguez listened to the reports with the calm demeanor that had made her one of the most respected leaders in human history. "What are you recommending?" Mendez looked around at his fellow officers before responding. "Madam President, we have two choices. We can try to negotiate from a position of weakness, admitting that we've been trespassing in their space and hoping they'll forgive our ignorance. Or we can make it clear that humanity is a force to be reckoned with, and that any negotiations will be between equals. The Federation has been dismissing reports of human activity as pirate raids," Dr. Chen added. "They literally think we're a myth from their ancient history. That gives us a significant psychological advantage if we choose to use it." "General," Cooper nodded grimly, "our intelligence suggests that the Federation has been at peace for over 3 centuries. Their military forces are large but untested. They've never faced an opponent that fights the way humans do." President Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, weighing the options. Finally, she looked directly at Admiral Mendez. "Carlos, how long would it take you to deploy the full Deep Space Fleet?" 6 weeks, ma'am. We'd have to accelerate the completion schedule on some vessels, but it's doable." "Do it," she ordered. "I want every ship we have ready for deployment. If we're going to negotiate with this Federation, we'll do it from a position of strength." Meanwhile, in the outer sectors, the hunt for human vessels had begun in earnest. Admiral Quinder of the Nexus Fleet commanded a battle group of 50 ships, the largest force the Federation had assembled in living memory. His orders were clear: locate and capture any human vessels found in Federation space, and use whatever force was necessary to accomplish the mission. The problem was that the humans were proving remarkably difficult to find. Their ships seemed to appear and disappear without warning, striking at Federation outposts and supply convoys before vanishing into the vast emptiness of space. When Federation forces arrived to investigate, they found only debris and strange energy signatures that didn't match anything in their databases. Captain Maria Santos commanded the UN's Vengeance, one of the new fast attack vessels that had been designed for exactly this kind of asymmetric warfare. Her ship was smaller than the Federation vessels hunting her, but it was also faster and more maneuverable. Most importantly, it was equipped with quantum communication systems that allowed instant coordination with other human ships across vast distances. "Federation patrol group approaching at bearing 187, reported her tactical officer. 3 heavy cruisers and a command ship." They're running an active sensor sweep. Santos smiled grimly. The Federation ships were broadcasting their positions like beacons, making no attempt at stealth. After centuries of peace, they had forgotten the basic principles of military operations. "Take us into the asteroid field," she ordered. "Let them follow us if they want to play." The chase that followed was a masterclass in the difference between peacetime military exercises and actual combat. The Federation ships pursued the human vessel into the dense asteroid field, confident that their superior numbers and firepower would quickly end the engagement. Instead, they found themselves fighting an opponent that seemed to know exactly where they would be at any given moment. The Vengeance used the asteroids for cover, appearing just long enough to launch kinetic projectiles before disappearing again behind the rocky debris. The Federation ships, designed for open space combat, found their energy weapons largely ineffective against targets that refused to stay in one place long enough to be properly targeted. Within an hour, 2 of the Federation ships had been disabled by precisely targeted strikes that took out their propulsion and weapons systems without destroying the vessels entirely. The survivors limped back to their base with reports that would terrify the Federation High Command. Back on Earth, Dr. Amy Chen was analyzing every piece of intelligence that human forces had gathered about the Federation. What she discovered was both encouraging and disturbing. The aliens had superior numbers, and their individual ships were larger than most human vessels. But they fought like they were participating in a sporting event rather than actual combat. "They have rules," she explained to President Rodriguez during their daily briefing. "Formal protocols for everything from target acquisition to prisoner treatment. It's like they've turned warfare into a gentleman's agreement, and that's a weakness we can exploit," General Cooper added. "Our people have been fighting real wars for their entire history. We know that the only rule in combat is to win." President Rodriguez nodded slowly. "How long before Admiral Mendez's fleet is ready?" 3 weeks, ma'am," Cooper replied. "And when it arrives, the galaxy is going to discover that some myths are more dangerous than reality." The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council convened in chaos. Representatives from 47 worlds filled the Great Hall, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds that the translation systems struggled to process. Elder Counselor Kefton floated at the center of the assembly, his crystalline body flickering with patterns that indicated deep concern. "Order," he called, his melodic voice somehow cutting through the noise. "We must have order if we are to address this crisis effectively." Ambassador Zextira stood at her platform, no longer the dismissed voice warning of mysterious disappearances. The reports flooding in from across the outer sectors had vindicated her concerns in the most terrifying way possible. "The humans have struck 17 different targets in the past week," she announced. "Supply convoys, research stations, patrol vessels. They appear and disappear without warning, and our forces cannot predict where they will strike next." Commander Tessara, recently released from human captivity, stepped forward to address the council. Her chitinous armor bore scorch marks from the battle that had led to her capture, and her testimony had already sent shockwaves through the Federation military command. "I have seen their ship from the inside," she reported. "Their technology operates on principles we do not understand. They communicate instantly across vast distances, coordinate their attacks with precision we cannot match, and their weapons penetrate our defenses as if they were made of paper." General Vorthok of the Warcast, one of the Federation's most experienced military commanders, had spent the past week studying every scrap of intelligence about human capabilities. "The most disturbing aspect is not their technology," he rumbled, "but their tactical approach. They do not fight like any species in our database. They use deception, misdirection, and what can only be described as psychological warfare." Admiral Quinder appeared via holographic transmission from his flagship. his usual confidence replaced by obvious frustration. "We have engaged human forces 12 times in the past week," he reported. "In every encounter they have achieved their objectives and escaped with minimal losses. Meanwhile, we have lost over 30 vessels, either destroyed or disabled." The assembled delegates listened in stunned silence. The Federation had not suffered military casualties on this scale in over 2 centuries. The very concept of an enemy that could strike repeatedly without being brought to battle was alien to their experience. Dr. Velinara requested permission to address the council. An elder counselor, Keftin, granted it despite the unusual nature of allowing a simple researcher to speak during an emergency session. She moved to the central platform, carrying the artifact that had been troubling her for weeks. "Honored representatives," she began, "I believe I can explain why the human technology is so effective against our defenses. This artifact was discovered 3 weeks ago on a derelict mining platform in the Outer Rim. Initial analysis suggested it was of unknown origin, but recent events have allowed me to make a positive identification." She activated the artifact, and it began to pulse with the same energy signatures that Federation ships had detected during their encounters with human vessels. "This device is not ancient, as we first believed. It is recent human technology, probably no more than a few months old. More importantly, it demonstrates that the humans have been operating in Federation space far longer than we realized." The implications of her statement sent a ripple of alarm through the assembly. If the humans had been present in Federation space for an extended period, studying their technology and tactics while remaining hidden, then the recent attacks were not random acts of aggression but part of a carefully planned strategy. Captain Lisa Park, now commanding her own vessel after her promotion following the first contact incident, stood on the bridge of the Un's Vengeance as it approached another Federation supply convoy. Her orders were simple: disrupt Federation supply lines while gathering as much intelligence as possible about their military capabilities. 3 cargo vessels escorted by 2 destroyers, her tactical officer reported. Standard formation, no attempt at tactical dispersion. Park nodded. After weeks of engaging Federation forces, human commanders had developed a healthy respect for their technology while losing all fear of their tactical abilities. The aliens fought like they were conducting training exercises, following predictable patterns that made them easy prey for humans who had learned warfare in the brutal schools of Earth's conflicts. "Take us in, using approach vector 7, she ordered. "Target the escort vessel's propulsion systems first. I want those cargo ships intact for intelligence gathering." The attack unfolded with the precision that had become characteristic of human military operations. The Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the convoy's sensor range, launched a spread of kinetic projectiles, and disappeared back into hyperspace before the Federation escorts could respond. The projectiles, traveling at significant fractions of light speed, struck their targets with devastating accuracy within minutes. Both escort vessels were drifting powerless, their crews frantically broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. Park brought her ship back into normal space near the cargo vessels, which had obediently shut down their engines and were awaiting instructions. "This is Captain Lisa Park of the Terran Union Navy," she broadcast on the frequency the Federation used for official communications. "Your escort vessels have been disabled, but not destroyed. Prepare to be boarded for inspection of your cargo and data systems. Any attempt to resist will result in the destruction of your vessels." The boarding operation that followed revealed intelligence that would prove crucial to humanity's understanding of their new enemies. The cargo vessels were carrying not just supplies, but also detailed tactical manuals, communication protocols, and strategic assessments of Federation military capabilities. Dr. Nathan Cole, now serving as the intelligence officer for the Deep Space Fleet, analyzed the captured data with growing amazement. "They have detailed files on every human ship they've encountered," he reported to Admiral Mendez via quantum communication. but they're treating us like a minor pirate organization, rather than a coordinated military force. What about their strategic assessment of our capabilities? Mendez asked. That's the really interesting part, sir. They know we use kinetic weapons and quantum communication, but they have no idea how these technologies work. Their scientists are baffled by the physics involved. It's like they've been following a completely different path of technological development. Meanwhile, on the Federation side, the pattern of human attacks was creating panic among both military and civilian leadership. Admiral Quindor had requested reinforcements 3 times, only to watch the additional ships fall victim to the same hit-and-run tactics that had proven so effective against his original force. They know where we're going to be before we get there, he reported to the Federation High Command. Either they have intelligence sources we haven't identified, or their sensor technology is far superior to ours. What Admiral Quindor didn't realize was that the humans had been monitoring Federation communications for months, learning their languages, studying their tactical doctrines, and mapping their supply routes. Every Federation transmission was intercepted and analyzed by teams of linguists and military intelligence specialists working around the clock to understand their new enemies. Dr. Amy Chen had established a special task force dedicated to analyzing Federation psychology and culture. What she discovered was both reassuring and troubling. They're genuinely peaceful, she reported to President Rodriguez. This isn't some elaborate deception. They really have avoided major conflicts for over 3 centuries. But that means they have no experience dealing with an opponent who doesn't follow their rules. Is that an advantage for us? The president asked. In the short term, absolutely. But in the long term, it could be a problem. If they decide we're an existential threat to their way of life, they might overcome their peaceful nature and commit resources to destroying us that we can't match. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Fleet Admiral Mendez. Madam President, we've intercepted a Federation transmission that changes everything. They're mobilizing their entire military fleet, over 500 ships, from dozens of different species. They're calling it the largest force in galactic history. President Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. How long before they reach our territory? 2 weeks, ma'am, maybe less, and our fleet, ready for deployment in 72 hours. But we'll be outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Rodriguez closed her eyes for a moment, weighing the options available to humanity. They could try to negotiate, but the Federation seemed committed to treating them as a threat to be eliminated. They could retreat deeper into human space, and hope the aliens would be satisfied with driving them away. But that would only delay the inevitable confrontation. Deploy the fleet, Admiral, she ordered. If the Federation wants a war, we'll give them one they'll remember for the next 1,000 years. The Federation fleet that assembled at the edge of the Kepler sector was the most massive military force in recorded galactic history. Over 500 ships from dozens of different worlds hung in space like a metallic constellation. There, various designs reflecting the diverse nature of the species that had built them. Elder Counselor Kefton commanded from the bridge of the massive dreadnought Eternal Peace, a vessel so large it could have housed entire cities within its hull. Admiral Quindor stood beside the Elder Counselor, studying the tactical displays that showed the disposition of their forces. Despite the overwhelming numbers advantage, he felt uneasy about the coming battle. Every encounter with human forces had taught him to expect the unexpected, and he suspected that the humans would not simply line up for a conventional fleet engagement. Our scouts report no sign of human activity in the target system, he informed the Elder Counselor. Either they have withdrawn their forces, or they are employing some form of stealth technology beyond our detection capabilities. Kefton's crystalline form pulsed with confidence. They cannot hide from a force of this magnitude, Admiral. Whatever tricks they have used against our patrol vessels will be ineffective against a fleet of this size. What neither of them knew was that humanity's entire deep space fleet was already in position, hidden behind the gas giant at the system's edge. and using its massive magnetic field to mask their energy signatures. Fleet Admiral Carlos Mendez stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UN's Earth's Fury, coordinating with his subordinate commanders through quantum communication links that the Federation couldn't detect or intercept. "All ships report ready for combat operations," announced Captain Steve Johnson, Mendez's flag captain. "The Federation fleet is maintaining standard formation, no attempt at tactical dispersal." Mendez nodded grimly. The Federation forces were approaching the battle like it was a parade review, their ships arranged in neat formations that looked impressive, but would prove vulnerable to the kind of coordinated attack that human forces specialized in. "Signal all ships to prepare for Operation Thunderbolt." Captain Maria Santos received the signal aboard her carrier, the UN's Liberty, and immediately began launching her complement of fast attack craft. These small, highly maneuverable vessels could deliver devastating kinetic strikes, while remaining too small and fast for the Federation's energy weapons to target effectively. Lieutenant Colonel Diana Foster, commanding one of the Marine assault battalions, prepared her troops for what might be the most unusual battle in human history. Their mission was to board and capture key Federation vessels, gathering intelligence while demonstrating humanity's capability for close combat operations that the aliens had never encountered. The first phase of the battle began when the Federation fleet reached the inner system. Admiral Quindor ordered his forces to advance in standard battle formation, expecting the humans to meet them with whatever ships they could muster for a conventional engagement. Instead, the Federation fleet found itself under attack from multiple directions simultaneously. Human ships emerged from hyperspace at dozens of different points around the Federation formation, each one targeting specific vessels with precisely aimed kinetic strikes. The attack was coordinated with a precision that left Federation commanders struggling to respond. Before they could adapt to threats from one direction, new attacks came from completely different vectors. "Report," Elder Counselor Kefton demanded, as his flagship shuddered under impact from projectiles that had somehow penetrated their defensive screens. "Multiple contacts throughout the fleet," Admiral Quinder replied, his voice tight with stress. "At least 200 human vessels, possibly more. They're using hit-and-run tactics, striking and then disappearing before we can respond effectively." Captain Steve Johnson watched the tactical display as human forces systematically dismantled the Federation fleet's defensive capabilities. The aliens were trying to fight according to their traditional doctrines, maintaining formation and attempting to bring their superior numbers to bear in decisive engagements. But the humans refused to cooperate with their enemies' expectations. Federation command ship is attempting to coordinate a counterattack, Johnson reported. "They're trying to form their heavy units into a defensive screen." Admiral Mendez smiled coldly. "Signal Captain Santos to begin the second phase. Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like." The UN's Liberty launched every small craft in its bays, sending waves of fighter bombers and assault shuttles racing toward the Federation fleet. These tiny vessels, each carrying crews of only 2 or 3 humans, proved devastatingly effective against ships designed to fight other capital vessels. They swarmed over the Federation fleet like angry insects, targeting weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, and engine components with surgical precision. Commander Paul Williams led one of the assault shuttles directly toward the Federation flagship. His mission was to deliver Lieutenant Colonel Foster's Marines directly to the Bridge of the Eternal Peace, capturing the Federation's supreme commander and ending the battle in one decisive stroke. Elder Counselor Kefton watched in growing horror as his magnificent fleet was torn apart by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. The humans fought like nothing in Federation experience, ignoring all the conventional rules of space combat and employing tactics that bordered on the impossible. "Sir," Admiral Quindor called urgently, "I'm receiving reports of human boarding parties throughout the fleet. They're capturing our ships from the inside." The boarding operations were unlike anything the Federation had ever encountered. Human Marines moved through alien ship corridors with practiced efficiency, using weapons and tactics that the Federation crew had no training to counter. Within hours, key vessels throughout the Federation fleet found themselves under human control. Lieutenant Colonel Foster led her troops onto the bridge of the Eternal Peace, just as Elder Counselor Kefton was attempting to coordinate a fleet withdrawal. The crystalline being turned to face the human invaders with what might have been resignation. "I surrender my vessel and my fleet," he declared in perfect galactic standard. "Your victory is complete." Foster lowered her weapon but kept it ready. "Elder Counselor, by order of Fleet Admiral Mendez, you are requested to attend a diplomatic conference. The Terran Union wishes to discuss terms for a peaceful resolution to this conflict." What happened next would reshape the galaxy's understanding of power and diplomacy. Admiral Mendez's flagship approached the captured Federation dreadnought, and the Admiral himself transferred aboard to meet with the alien leadership. When he stepped onto the bridge of the Eternal Peace, he did so speaking perfect galactic standard, demonstrating that humanity had been studying Federation communications for far longer than anyone had suspected. "Elder Counselor Kefton Mendez said formally, I am Fleet Admiral Carlos Mendez of the Terran Union Navy. I believe we have some matters to discuss." The crystalline being stared at the human commander with something approaching awe. "You speak our language perfectly. How long have you been watching us?" "Long enough to understand your civilization, your technology, and your military capabilities," Mendez replied honestly. "We never intended for first contact to occur under these circumstances. But your fleet's aggressive actions forced our hand." Dr. Amy Chen, now serving as humanity's first galactic ambassador, joined the conversation via holographic link from Earth. "Elder Counselor, the Terran Union wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Federation. However, these relations must be based on mutual respect and recognition of humanity's sovereignty over our territorial claims." Kefton's form flickered with patterns that indicated deep thought. "You have demonstrated capabilities far beyond what we believed possible. Your technology, your tactics, your coordination, all of it suggests a level of military sophistication that the Federation has never encountered. We are not the mythical destroyers from your ancient legends," Dr. Chen continued. "We are a young species that has learned to survive in a hostile universe through strength, adaptability, and determination. We seek peaceful coexistence with other intelligent species, but we will defend ourselves if threatened." Admiral Kindar, his proud demeanor replaced by grudging respect, stepped forward. "What are your terms?" "Admiral Mendez, consulte da data." Pad that contained the formal position approved by President Rodriguez and the Terran Union Council. "Recognition of human sovereignty over our current territorial holdings. Establishment of formal diplomatic relations between the Terran Union and the Galactic Federation. And mutual agreement on protocols for peaceful contact between our species. And if we refuse?" Kefton asked. Mendez gestured toward the tactical displays that showed Federation ships throughout the system, most of them disabled or under human control. "Then you'll discover that this demonstration was just a small sample of human military capability. We have no desire for conquest, but we will not be dismissed or ignored." The negotiations that followed would take weeks to complete, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Federation had learned that the galaxy contained at least one species that was not impressed by their peaceful intentions, or superior numbers. Humanity had announced its presence with overwhelming force, and the galactic community would have no choice but to acknowledge them as equals. As the human fleet began releasing captured Federation vessels and withdrawing to defensive positions, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The mythical humans were not only real, they were here to stay, and they had just rewritten the rules of galactic diplomacy forever. Dr. Velanara, monitoring the aftermath from her research station, made careful notes about everything she observed. The artifact in her laboratory had proven to be just the beginning of humanity's revelations. As she watched human ships moving through space with casual confidence, she realized that the galaxy had entered a new age, one where peaceful coexistence would be maintained not through good intentions alone, but through the mutual understanding that some myths were more dangerous than reality.